Hello, everybody, and welcome back to artofdino.com. And it is time to remember a little bit about the past and maybe try to piece it together with a little action that's happened recently in Hawaii, which is a disaster of the most ridiculous proportions. I can't even believe it. When you think about and hear about all the slip-ups and all the things that didn't happen that were supposed to happen, and you see the devastation and you hear everybody that was there talk about how unnatural it was, and then you hear the news talk about climate change and try to blame it on stuff that's going to cost everyone a bunch of money and not make any sense and doesn't have any science backing it up, when it was clear that someone with a lot of money was behind this, because nature doesn't just discriminate in its path of destruction. It does a pretty good job at not discriminating, and this seemed like the California ones, all of these different things that don't just happen in the middle of nowhere. They always end up happening in places where for years rich people have been trying to access the land that is owned by the locals and the people that have been there, the natives that have been there for a long time. This story happens all over the place, all over the world, has been happening for probably thousands of years, and now it's entered the modern mix in the modern world, in the modern way. And so I thought it would be a good time to remind everybody about the death ray of Nikola Tesla, which he intended to use for defense, which is really sad when you assume that it is now being used for everything but defense. And he, like so many geniuses in their time, strive and they work so hard to make the world a better place. Up until their dying days, every single day they work to try and solve the problem of how can I fix this world? How can I save Earth? How can I make it better? And these people, they work very hard for it, and they go against an evil force that just has no remorse, has no sympathy, and is just purely disgusting, and always wants to take good and turn it into evil for profit, for destruction, for their own power and control purposes. So it's really sad, the way of the world, and it shouldn't work this way, and hopefully when the evil is destroyed, it won't work this way in the future. But as of now, it does, and Hawaii is a perfect example of it. And people like Oprah that are just dying to get land, just, they do whatever it takes. And those people who parade themselves as humanitarians behind the scenes will do anything to get what they want, to have their little slice of paradise and keep all the serfs and normies out. They will do anything. So you can't put it past them. And I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying I don't think this was natural. Follow the money is usually a correct way of deciphering where the blame is to be put. And so this one probably goes in a lot of directions, because this is a pretty serious event, pretty catastrophic. And I don't know who's to blame, but I know someone is. And I know that someone and some people are pure evil to be able to do something so disgraceful and disgusting to people in paradise that are vacationing and living the dream. But you can't live the dream anymore in these sick people's realities, because they will do everything they can to destroy it for as many people as they can except themselves. And so hopefully this will change. So I'd like to see and read this article, Proposing the Death Ray for Defense, from Nikola Tesla, and I believe it's 1940, October 20th, in the Philadelphia Inquirer. So take a listen to this, and it's just a little flashback. If you've never heard of this stuff before, it's pretty interesting. If you have read this article before, then you can listen to my chime-ins, or you can get out of here, whatever. But either way, it's a little too suspicious, and whenever they say that this guy's tech has not still been found to this day in all his papers where he did the research for this, you can pretty much guess whose hands it's in. But here we go. Let's read this article here, and I'll chime in from time to time, and we'll see what happens. And it begins with a quote. The beam would melt enemy airplane motors before they approached our coast and blow up hostile bombers. So he knew right away it could melt engines, airplane motors. Interesting. The man was old, but the fervor in his eyes was ageless, deep-set. They looked out beneath the business of his brows. If only they will let me try out my new teleforce, exclaimed Nikola Tesla, who has been called one of the greatest electrical inventors since Benjamin Franklin flew his kite. If only they will let me show how this nation can be made invulnerable to air attack. Boy, did those intentions get shifted. Thus, just the other day spoke the man who years ago helped to harness Niagara Falls through his discovery of the principle of the rotary magnetic field. The man who is known as the father of modern methods of generating and distributing electrical energy, who in 1904 predicted that the human voice one day would girdle the globe, and whose famed Tesla coil helped to make that prediction of radio come true. Today at 83, Nikola Tesla lives in a New York hotel, the New Yorker, and dreams of making America one vast, impregnable fortress. He says that he can do this. Tesla is used to skeptics who, he says, laughed at him back in the old days when he worked at Orange, New Jersey with Thomas Edison. Tesla helped Edison design motors and generators. Then, of course, there was a great deal of laughing in 1904 over Tesla's idea that the human voice would one day wing around the world. And that is very interesting when you talk about how he was laughed at different times. It's almost like and there's a lot of different theories out there about Tesla. Was he really as the genius that they tell he was? And I kind of do believe it, because I really do think he was smart, and I do think this information and knowledge is possible. But there's also theories out there that he was like a prop, like an Einstein who's a clear fraud, and like a Fauci and a Bill Nye and all these other Neil deGrasse Tysons who were total frauds, and that he was maybe the first one. I don't believe that, because I think he was doing some serious stuff, and I like his methods, and I love his research, and the people surrounding him are really great, and I kind of tend to lean on the side that he was actually one of the only people who was capable of reverse engineering the Antiquitech. And so they clearly didn't want to go in that direction, the powers that be, and so I think that they steered everything the wrong way, laughed at him, made him a joke, especially, oh, senile old man who feeds pigeons, etc. But whatever you think, we're all entitled to our own thoughts about the past that we don't know the exact truth about. But either way, enjoy. Today, trembling with excitement, this slim old man tells how his newest invention, he holds 700 patents, can melt airplane motors at a distance of 250 miles away from the American coastline, so that invading aviators would drop into the sea. My new teleforce, he declares, is based on an entirely new principle of physics that nobody ever has dreamed of. It is different from the principle embodied in my inventions relating to the transmission of electrical power from a distance, for which I hold a number of basic patents. So he was entering new territory here. For years, Tesla worked on the problem of transmitting electrical power from a distance without bringing this dream out of the laboratory into the workday world. But he was not alone in his belief that it eventually will be done. The great Marconi, shortly before his death, predicted that the day would come when power would be directed through the air with little loss. And like Tesla, Marconi was reported to have been working on a war ray. It was said, would, when perfected, be able to stop airplane and other motors many miles before invading forces could reach their goals. And it's also interesting when you think about it, as we see all these melted buildings, all this amazing destruction, you can't help but wonder if some of this was ancient tech, and that people had this tech and discovered this power a long time ago and put it to use, cleansing this world in one of the ancient resets. Who knows? And again, maybe he stumbled across it in a book, or maybe he just thought of it, invented it, tapped into the noosphere and figured it out. Again, I don't know. It's all theory. But let's keep going. For the U.S. alone, Marconi said little about his mysterious ray, nor will Tesla discuss the details of his. It is his secret, and he will not reveal it, he says, except to the United States government. Oof, bad idea. For he is afraid that it might be stolen by enemies of America who are already inside America. Little did he know that America was the enemy, within and without, but of what it will do, he speaks freely. Well, American government actually was the enemy, not the people. We're always the best. This new type of force, he said the other day, would operate through a beam 1/100,000,000th of a centimeter in diameter. It could be generated from a special plant that would cost no more than $2 million and would only take about 3 months to construct. A dozen such plants located at strategic points along the coast would be enough to defend this country against all possible aerial attacks. This beam would melt any engine, whether diesel or gasoline driven. Marconi's partly perfected beam was said to be ineffective against diesel engines. It would also ignite any explosives aboard any bomber. No possible defense against it could be devised, as the beam would be all-penetrating. which is kind of interesting when you see the things that happen to some of these houses. And there are some different pictures, in whether it's California, Hawaii, or elsewhere. You see a beam, and then you see other things like igniting, and the wind is another factor. I'm not sure where the wind comes into play, but all these other explosives that end up blowing, you blow up one part of a house, and every house is filled with tons of different things, and they keep spreading, and then the chemicals get out, and it's just a total disaster. And they've been working on this for probably since Tesla's death. 4 recent inventions, Tesla says, are used in the generation of the ray. 2 of them already have been tested, it is said. One of these is an apparatus for producing rays and other manifestations of energy in free air instead of in a vacuum. Very interesting, in free air instead of the proposed vacuum of space. But again, other manifestations of energy. So what else could they do? What else did they find in his papers and reverse engineer to terrorize the world? The second is a process for producing a very great electrical force. Next is a method for amplifying this force. And finally, there's a new method for producing a tremendous electrical repelling force. This, Tesla declares, would be the projector or gun of the teleforce system. It would operate on a potential of 50 million volts. That's enough to cause some serious devastation. And again, when you think about the particles, like you said, that get thrown up into the air and different things, like that could help create some wind. And again, the fire, all the air that's kind of consuming, and everything, it's gonna create a disaster of totally unnatural proportions. Nature and God do not do things like this. Only humans can. Dramatically, Tesla describes how a titanic voltage would hurl into space billions of microscopic electrical particles of matter that would bring down invading airplanes as insects are dropped by a spray gun. Whew. All this, Tesla says, he is offering to the United States, the land which welcomed him as an immigrant boy from Austria-Hungary in 1884. But there must be no red tape. If he is to go to work setting up the first power plant, there must be no interference from experts. This also reminds me, when he says that spray, it kind of reminds me of some of those quote-unquote Tesla experiments that Elon Musk has done, where you see these balloon-like things exploding in the atmosphere and creating these kind of like gelatinous jellyfish-like scenes. And I wonder if that is a part of this. One of his technologies, again, they're just testing out in front of us, and people are like, ooh, wow, did you see that? That was so cool. Meanwhile, we're all getting pummeled, and they're basically testing out weapons of extermination above us, and we're kind of rooting them on in some sick way. But here we go. Offers like this have been made before, and tests have proved many so-called death rays useless. But some authorities, remembering the great achievements of Nikola Tesla, believe his claims should be investigated. Why, they ask, should such a ray be considered impossible in a world where radio is a commonplace? They recall the case of Henry Floor, who was prosecuted in San Francisco by disgruntled investors who claimed he had bamboozled them with a death ray machine intended to kill insects. In the courtroom, Floor turned his machine on a couple of termites. They died in seconds. A lizard and a snake also were killed by the ray, though it took longer. Floor was released. He said that he never would experiment with his apparatus to make it a man-killer. And he wouldn't have to, because someone probably already was by the time that court session was over. That's how the place works. Inventors offer the last paragraphs here. Then there is Dr. Antonio Langoria, who says that he destroyed a death ray machine, which he invented in 1933 because it was too dangerous. Of this machine, Albert Burns, president of the Inventors Congress in 1934, said that he had seen it kill pigeons, rabbits, dogs, and cats at considerable distances. Now, Dr. Langoria says that he is willing to reassemble his apparatus in the event that the United States is subjected to an unwarranted attack. He claims that it worked by changing the red corpuscles of its victim's blood to white, and he says that it might be adapted to stall the motors of airplane engines in flight. I wonder if any of this is also being used in the 5G, 6G nonsense technology, or all over the place. These people, it's really disgusting how the world kind of convinced a lot of the great minds to do these really creative things and do great things to help the world, and then behind the scenes all these inventions were being made to destroy and cause humanity's own collapse. And so it's really sick. But The only way to end it is to make note of it and make people aware. That's what we're going to try and do here. If such things are possible, some authorities ask, why not give Nikola Tesla the chance he asked to try out his defensive death ray? True, he has been called the greatest dreamer among the inventors who created the present electrical era, but many of his dreams came true. Perhaps, they say, this one might come true too, and build a wall mightier than any in the world around America's borders. 1940. Wow, things have changed. And the powers that be, this is actually still the time when people thought the government was good and doing good things and, on the right path and with good intentions. Nowadays, holy God, it has changed so dramatically and disgustingly that it's nauseating. And the examples just keep coming out. And the media just completely steamrolls everyone into just believing this nonsense. Thankfully, some voices are getting out and people are thinking for themselves and wondering how this could happen. Anybody that thinks what happened in California and all over the place, Canada, Hawaii, all these things, if you think they're natural, you tell that person that they are a fool and they are missing out on reality. It's sadly not this fairy tale that we all were grown up to think it was. The more and more we learn about these disasters and these dangers that they are placing upon us and threatening us with, the more we really must do something about it to end it and bring back the force of people making inventions for good, things that the world can benefit from, things that can save people, things that can save the earth. We need to get out the filth that's tainting every single thing about our world, doing whatever it can in the name of money, control, and power to destroy the innocent and destroy the beautiful people of this world, the people that really make this world the place and the magical dream miracle that it is. These other people don't. They're ruining, they're taking our miracle and they're just absolutely taking a dump on it in every way possible. And it has to stop at some point. When will humanity hit the limit and start just turning on these people that have caused everyone that we know and love so much trouble, whether they realize it or not? So much death has occurred at the hands of evil, and it must be eradicated someday. And we really need to point a finger at the right people, the right face, bring them to justice and end this stuff, because we all deserve much better. And inventors like this, we shouldn't even have to have a death ray to protect us from anything. This war mentality needs to be eradicated just as much as the evil does. And I hope that we can do it. And really, again, raising awareness is one of the greatest weapons we can. If we can wake everyone up, then we can do a lot, and then they can't pull this stuff on us anymore, and then we can make sure justice gets done. It's the only way. It's a slow process, but it needs to happen faster and more stronger and bigger and bolder than ever before, because we have to stop these resets from occurring, even on the smallest of scales, before they make the really big scale one happen. So, bless you all. I hope we can do it. Spread this, spread everything, and pray for the people in Hawaii. That is such a terrible disaster, and I hope they get the justice that they deserve, and the people that are responsible for this pay the ultimate price, because it's just such a shame that anything can be done like that in such a perfect world. But it is, sadly so. Bless you all. Thanks again.